Hello, everyone. My name is Joseph Cunningham. Talking in this mic is going to be hecka awkward, but I'm going to make the most of it. I've probably talked in a microphone maybe like 6 times in my life, so I'm going to just like fluidly make this like a thing, all right? I'm Dr. Joseph Cunningham. I run the Writing and Reading Center here at UHD. I have been a English faculty member for 13 years. I've taught college writing for like 15 years. Today, I want to talk about a very unique issue. Like, it's summertime, it's the end of summer. You all have probably not been like thinking deeply about writing over summer, as much as I have, but I'm gonna get you back in the groove. We're gonna talk about some writing. And today we're going to talk about a specific issue, which is overwriting. This presentation came about by virtue of me working one-on-one with a bunch of UHD students this past academic year. And basically what I've noticed when I literally sat down with them and we sort of like collaboratively composed their essays is that there was this reoccurring issue that came up in their writing. And it wasn't like overly simplistic sort of composition, but instead it was like they overwrote their paper. They wrote in a sort of long, rambling sort of style. And that's what I found to be sort of problematic. It's interesting. We're gonna look at it in greater detail. How about right now? Bam. And I gotta like use 2. It's wild. All right, so we're gonna talk about the problem of overwriting. Like, what is it? How does it sort of manifest in students' essays? We're gonna look at examples of overwriting. We're gonna talk about strategies on how to sort of eliminate it. So as you sort of take, these initial college courses, like writing is a facet or a component or a part of virtually every college class. So no matter your prospective discipline, you're gonna be writing some papers. And hopefully this is like a very specific sort of presentation that will, help you out as you're writing your first essays in your college career. So, overwriting, what is it? It's a tendency to write overly long, wordy sentences. How many of you think you might have this problem? Like, show of hands. Yeah, like there's like a reoccurring sort of like issue in composition where we write the way we talk. And if you're anything like me, like I just ramble like a madman. And what happens is that manifests in your writing. It mirrors your compositional style. So there's a tendency to write overly long, wordy sentences, and there's a lot of different reasons. Number one, when you're in college, you think, the longer the sentence, the better, clearly. If I throw in a bunch of $10 words, if I throw in a bunch of like long list, my paper is gonna just be an A by default. That's not the case. Also, like again, we tend to write the way we speak. That can create this issue. And also, a lot of students struggle with like page length requirements, right? You gotta write a 5-page paper. You gotta write a 10-page paper. It's like, I just need some words on this god-darn page. Like, I just need to get it done, right? And what that does is it doesn't necessarily create the best sentences as you compose, right? A lot of students, their sentences have multiple ideas like crammed within them, which I think is a problem. It's sort of like, one thing I want to encourage you today is to like embrace simplicity. Like one idea or main idea per sentence, like less words can be better. So start thinking about those sort of like ideas. Writing more clearly, more simply. There's a nice like college word, lucid, which just is another fancy word for clear. If you write lucidly, like that's Somerset Maugham, a famous British novelist in the early 20th century, wrote a great book called Of Human Bondage, and he said writing lucidly was where it was at. So this all be like Somerset Maugham. And in college composition, it's very common just to see this problem of overwriting. So do I have an example? No, one more. Why is it a problem? Well, it means that your essay is unclear and unfocused, right? Like you submit an essay and then you might get it back from your professor and you might have a single word over a paragraph written in red that says unclear. We always want to have a clear meaning to our composition, and overwriting sort of obscures that. It manifests at a sentence level, but if it is a problem in every sentence, then your entire paper is going to be suffering from this issue. And it can lead to grammatical issues. And this is another sort of problem of overwriting, right? The longer the sentence, the greater potentiality that you're going to have a grammatical mistake. So if you keep things sort of simple and direct and utilize more concrete sentences, then the odds of you having grammatical mistakes will actually sort of go down, right? So it's another thing to keep in mind. Let's look at an example, shall we? So this is an example of overwriting. You may laugh at it, but I see this kind of sentence like all the time. So I'm gonna read it. The problem of overwriting is a serious issue among writers who are college students because the papers that they write often become unclear and unfocused, which means that they lack meaning, and as a result, they tend to receive poor grades on their essays and lack professional writing skills. That is one sentence, and I think I was nearly out of breath as I read it, right? So you know there's a problem. Grammatically, it's like technically kind of okay. Like, despite the fact that it's like roughly 50 words long, it's rambling, it has multiple ideas crammed in. Like, grammatically speaking, like, I don't know if Microsoft Word would give it like a red line. I think it would skate under the grammar check. Nevertheless, this is an overwritten sentence. Like, it's not a good sentence. It's trash. We want to eliminate that. One thing that I want to, like, I'm going to provide like some strategies, but can anyone maybe like point out like a problem, like a specific issue in the sentence? I don't want to put you on the spot, but like, or maybe something you would change about it to make it less overwritten? Did you have an idea? Okay, so and this is a brilliant sort of observation. She said that like you can basically bam end the sentence on like students. Like breaking up a long sentence into like shorter, more direct sentences is a good idea. Oftentimes when I'm working with students one-on-one, I'm literally like, just like end the sentence right there, like period. Just put a period there. They want to keep piling on words. Any other ways to sort of like address some of the issues there? Yes. Mm-hmm. Perfect, yes. Among college student writers, as opposed to, again, we're utilizing multiple words but saying, you know, essentially the same thing. So can we reduce it while keeping like a compositional clarity? Brilliant. Was that in the back there? Did you have another idea? Yes. Very, very good. Yes. And this is something that you should all be doing as you're editing papers, right? When you're proofreading your work. We're all doing this, right? We're not just ending a paper and turning it in. We're actually editing and proofreading our writing. But not only looking for grammatical mistakes, but also like stylistic aspects. The things that Microsoft Word and Grammarly are not necessarily going to correct. Reducing the amount of words, eliminating redundancies, trying to say things more directly, breaking up sentences so they're less rambly. Also, just be careful of like the use of words like which. Like which is a very handy word, right? You can sort of build and make the sentence a bit more complex. But anytime you utilize which, you're adding on. So you just need to ensure that what you're adding actually needs to be there. This is like a subjective stylistic choice, right? It's not like grammatically right or grammatically wrong, but rather the richness and complexity of writing comes from these, what we call as writers and faculty members in composition, we call them rhetorical choices, right? The subjective choices that we make to make our writing more accessible, more approachable, reaching the audience more effectively, things of this nature. So be careful about things like which and making your sentences more complex. And as the first example we sort of discussed, like we can just like hack this comma and fuses these two complete sentences together. Do they need to be connected? She says no, and I agree. So we can literally just, again, bam, have a period instead. But really look at your own writing when you start writing these like initial essays and see to what extent these sort of issues sort of come or are like realized in your writing. And you'll see that like, hey, I'm actually writing in an overly convoluted way. So how can we eliminate this? Well, we have some simple ways to do it. Like we talked about this last point, edit, edit, edit. It's really important. And working with a service like the Writing and Reading Center, we can help you with that. I've already mentioned embracing simplicity. We're going to talk about that in a little greater detail here in a second. But also know where you're going when you write. And what I mean by that, and this is like the hardest thing to do, I think. The other two are like kind of obvious. Like it's obvious to edit your paper. It's nice to embrace simplicity in your composition. But knowing where you're going, I think, is like a really advanced writing strategy that actually comes as a habit of the mind. Like I'm composing sentences that I'm actually going to put on the page. If I know where they're going towards the end, I sort of have an idea about the nature of the sentence I'm going to write. So the primary reason why students tend to overwrite is that they don't know where their sentences are going. They're just like, and then I'm going to add a which, and then I'm going to add an and I'm going to add like these redundant words and phrases because again, I just want to see the end of this page so I'll be finished. When you start a sentence and you conceive its beginning, like think about where it's going at the end. I think a lot of students actually don't do this. I think a lot of students, it's sort of like a free writing, which is okay as long as you go back and edit. But one sort of like efficient thing that I would encourage you to do as you're composing is like, all right, I know how to start the sentence. I know this sentence is going to be about X, but where's it going to end? And how am I going to end it? And if you have like a concrete idea and actually something to reach for, then the sentence will already be like more formalized in your brain, if that makes sense. One thing I always encourage students to do in composition is like have like a roadmap. We always encourage students to compose outlines in writing. And a lot of students don't do it because they think it's more work, when actually it's like less work in the long run. Because if you know where you're going as a writer, it's gonna save you time. You just wanna eliminate all this sort of like compositional guesswork as you're composing. And this is sort of like at a sentence level. Outlining is at an essay level. Let's talk about simplicity in a more complex fashion, shall we? So there are different ways that you can embrace simplicity. And it's one thing, again, that I would encourage you to do. One idea per sentence, I think, is a nice rule of thumb. Now, can you utilize compound sentences where you do utilize that comma and connecting two sentences together? Absolutely. Can you compose a complex sentence? Absolutely. However, oftentimes the majority of your sentences, particularly if some of you are writing in business writing or technical writing or scientific writing, like one idea per sentence usually is your jam. It's only in more sort of like humanities-based composition where these like stylistic flourishes become more of an aspect of the genre, that like complexity becomes, a rule of thumb. So here I have another overwritten sentence. The author's writing style was straightforward, which is important because style is an integral part of writing and is the pathway through which meaning is conveyed to the reader. How would you correct this sentence, or what are some of the problems with this particular sentence. Again, grammatically okay. Very good. So there are two different ideas, right? We're talking about style as, the importance of writing style is being like straightforward, lucid, clear, but also this secondary comment on writing style, which is that style is almost a rhetorical pathway through which meaning is transposed. These two sort of ideas could be stated more directly, simply, and clearly with two complete sentences. We want to eliminate redundancies. I think this is like the easiest thing when it comes to like stylistic correction. The author of this text possessed a clear writing style that is simple, direct, and straightforward. These lists are often like a somewhat insidious aspect of a writer's style. If you can say it in just like one adjective or use one descriptor, just use one instead of three. You see this a lot, by the way, in like cover letters when you're trying to like cram in like all these characteristics about yourself that you want to communicate to a potential employer. Like I would just really highlight one really good thing as opposed to diluting the effectiveness of your message in a sentence by just utilizing multiple lists. So just a pro tip there. And like we can all agree like eliminating redundancy is good. It's often more difficult than one might imagine. Like the phrase, the author of this text, is sort of like redundant, right? Because obviously an author wrote the text. But like sometimes you think it sounds good to the ear or it sounds a bit more sophisticated. This is where I would encourage you to circle back around and embrace like simplicity of composition. And then avoid run-on, rambling sentences. The text's complex, convoluted style made it difficult to read, which is a problem for many readers who prefer a simple text that enhances readability, so the text needed to be edited with a judicious hand in order to be clear. It's a somewhat ironic sentence talking about the fact that it needs to be simple and clear, but nevertheless is a very convoluted sentence in form. And again, we need to like break the sentence up into like more simplistic parts. Like this sentence could easily be broken up into like 3 sentences. And we can eliminate like redundancies. We can have a more like sort of direct linear path when it comes to writing, one idea per sentence, things of that nature. So these are like examples of overwriting and maybe like ways to think about like correcting them. All right, obviously edit. Like it's perfectly fine if you have like examples of overwriting or underwriting or any type of like problematic writing in your writing, all right? It's fine. The important thing though is that you go back and edit. So you take that time to edit your work, proofread your work, like work with a friend or a colleague, work with us in the writing center, work with your faculty, work with your classmates, to actually edit your work. Editing, again, like I mentioned earlier, is more about just like correcting grammatical mistakes, but it's actually going back and addressing those like stylistic aspects and making your writing clearer. The other thing I would think about is like different ways of editing. Like if you're just like passively reading your writing silently to yourself, there's a tendency to like gloss over grammatical mistakes. The 2 things that I always encourage students to do is number 1, like if you can, like read the paper aloud. Like I know it takes more time and you think maybe it's like a bit too simplistic, but I would encourage you to do it. The first thing that we do in the Writing Center as tutors, and this is like standard across the country, is we read the student's paper like aloud to get a sense of flow in their writing, a sense of their voice, but also it helps us like focus sentence by sentence, line by line to sort of correct those like problematic aspects. If you read it silently, you already have an idea of what you're composing. You're just gonna scan over like grammatical mistakes. It happens all the time. So you don't have to do it all the time, but like if you're writing like a high stakes document worth 30% of your grade, or you're writing like a cover letter for a job and you want to have like the strongest cover letter possible, like spend a few minutes, read that thing aloud. The other thing to do is like break up the chronology of the actual text. So you start with the conclusion paragraph and then work backwards up the document. You don't have to necessarily go like sentence by sentence, but like I would like start with the last paragraph and then the second to the last paragraph and so on and so forth all the way to the introduction. Again, what that does is you're breaking up that like standard flow of your composition, and you're less likely to just scan over a grammatical or stylistic mistake as a result. So it's all about just taking yourself out of that same compositional headspace that you had initially when you composed the document. So we have this example again, and we sort of talked about like ways of addressing this problematic aspect of writing. One thing that I did, so I took some time, I edited my own bad writing evidenced here, is I just said, overwriting is a problem among college writers. So just like y'all talked about before, we can just eliminate this notion of writers who are college students. This issue leads to unclear essays. Like a lot of college students would say, no, that sentence is trash. Like it's got like 5 words. It's like, no, it's perfectly fine. It's like simple, it's clear, it's direct, it has one idea. Now, do I want an entire essay of like 5-word sentences? No. But like, it helps vary the stylistic flow of your writing, just to have like a nice, simple, direct sentence. As a result, which is like a nice like transition, right? Students who struggle with overwriting often receive poor grades and lack professional writing skills. You can tighten this up even more. You can make it more direct. You can make it better. But like this is, again, is like just a straightforward process. We took this big mass and broke it up into 3 sentences, each with its own primary idea and its own sort of like direct writing style to it. Writing's never gonna be perfect. That's the other thing, right? Like we all are growing as like writers throughout our college career. I've published a lot of papers in the past. I'm still like getting better. I'm still learning. I'm still growing as a writer. And it's important to realize your writing's never going to be perfect. Like virtually everything I write, particularly if I'm writing like a long document, it's gonna have like one typo. Like I just can't help myself. Like writing is tough, and writing perfectly is impossible. So it's perfectly fine. Overwriting is a common issue because writing is difficult, and you have to fulfill like length requirements, and you're balancing a lot of different aspects. You're integrating sources, you're composing an introduction, you're thinking about where you're going to go, you're thinking about other essays that you're writing, you're thinking about your social life. When you're balancing all these things mentally, like it's going to affect the clarity of your paper. So can you break down this like complex task and focus on more like simplified writing? The other thing I would encourage you to do, besides utilizing like the 3 strategies that I mentioned, is utilize the resources available to you. Here at UHD, we have the Writing and Reading Center, which is located on the 9th floor of this very building. All of our services are covered at our website, which is uhd.edu/WRC. It's like a great service that I would encourage you to utilize throughout your college career. Again, virtually every class at UHD has like a writing component. You can bring all of that writing into the WRC. It's like an incredible space, and I have a wonderful team of helpful tutors that I supervise who basically will look at your writing, analyze it with you, and then through a collaborative writing experience, like help you improve the document, which is great because you're turning that bad boy in to be graded. I've done like a ton of statistical work, and basically students who utilize the WRC, not surprisingly, are far more successful than those who aren't. So there's that aspect, but then like our long-term idealistic goal is that we're helping you like improve your knowledge of the writing process. We're helping you like locate certain holes in your compositional game that you can then, when you're writing by yourself, think, oh no, I know how to correct this now. I know how to integrate this source properly in APA format. I know how to properly compose like a thesis. I realize that this sentence is overwritten, so I'm going to simplify it. Working with these tutors on a consistent basis has been proven to basically improve, your grades and your knowledge of the writing process. Again, check out our website. We offer face-to-face sessions in the center in the fall, as well as like sessions via Zoom as well. So in face-to-face and online environments, the WRC is here to help you out. I think I've made like pretty good time. Are there any like final questions on like writing, the WRC, anything else? Yeah. That's a very good question. So you can do either. Like, I would encourage you to schedule an appointment because by like week 5, we're like pretty slammed. And we usually, like we are open Monday through Thursday, 9 to 7, Friday and Saturday, 9 to 3. By like week 5, and I offer like multiple appointment availabilities on the hour, every hour that we're open. Nevertheless, like after week 5, like we're usually booked 1 day in advance. So you can always like try to like walk in and like say, hey, can somebody help me? And we'll be like, yeah, sure. But only if somebody's available. Scheduling an appointment secures that time and is the better way to go. Great question. Yeah. No, it's completely free to all UHD students. So, and like bring all of your writing in, like whatever you're writing in your courses, as you compose your resumes and cover letters, if you're writing like essays for like scholarships, things of that nature, any like creative writing that you're doing, like we would love to work with it, work with you on it, yeah. Yeah, of course. Or even if you're going like, this is like a million miles away, but if you're going to grad school and you want to go to a different university for grad school, like we would help you compose that essay. So a lot of different sort of things as well. Any type of writing that you want perfected, and then again, working with like a trained writing tutor helps bolster your understanding of the writing process, so you become a better writer as a result. That's ideally how it works. Any other questions? Yeah. Uh-huh. There's no limit. Yeah. You have to give the tutor at least like an hour notice when you schedule. So you can literally say like, oh, I have like 1 p.m. free. If it's like 11:30, you can book a 1 o'clock. And I would totally encourage and try to encourage students to like schedule appointments early. Like, hey, I got like a decent draft, or maybe I got half my draft done. I'm gonna workshop that with like a writing tutor. A lot of students, they bring it in like last minute. It's like, this paper is due in 10 minutes. Can you help me? And I'm like, you're killing me, but let's try. So we will try to help you, but yeah, always utilizing any resource early is best, but hey, we're all hecka busy, like life happens. Bring those papers in regardless. Anything else? Yeah. What's that? Oh, it's called the Writing and Reading Center. My bad. Yeah. The WRC is the place to be, but yes. Yeah, Andrew. Yeah. MLA, APA, Chicago. Yeah, it's formatting, sure. Yeah, we are. Monday through Saturday. Yeah. Yeah, so we got some Saturday hours. Well, it was a pleasure like talking with you all. This is like the first time I've like talked with students here at UHD like in person. Best of luck to you this term. It's an absolute pleasure. Have a wonderful day.